Welcome to Academic Guru's Tutoring Thursday, where we answer all of your high school, college, and university questions. If you would like your question to be featured on next week's Tutoring Thursday, please submit your questions to questions@academicgurusinc.com. Don't forget to subscribe so you can stay current with all of our new videos. Today I'll be using substitution to solve a systems of equation question. And the question reads, a system of equations is given below. Y equals 4x minus 3 and 2x plus 7y equals 41. Which of the following steps could be used to solve by substitution? And we're given 4 different options here. As always, the best thing to do when solving a problem like this is to break it down into steps, with the first step being to understand the question. And by understanding the question, we're really identifying what the goal of this problem is. When we're talking about to solve by substitution, to solve really is referring to the variables x and y. That is, we're to identify the steps that are necessary in order to solve for the variables x and y. So that seems easy enough. Our only trouble is that we've been given 2 equations, and each of these equations has 2 variables. And as we've discussed in previous examples, whenever you're given multiple variables, the easiest way to solve a system of equation is by isolating at least one of the variables. In our case, we can decide to isolate either y or x. But the best way to go about this, especially when you're pressed for time during an exam, for example, is to identify the variable that requires the least steps to isolate. So in our case, for example, y has already been isolated. We know that y is equal to 4x minus 3. So this would be the ideal variable to select in this case, because it really doesn't require any more further steps to define the variable y. But that doesn't mean that you could also isolate x. In fact, if we want to isolate x, we could choose the first equation, y equals 4x minus 3. And in order to isolate the x, we'd have to get rid of the negative 3. And we do that by adding 3 to both sides of the equation. After adding 3 to both sides of the equation, we find that y plus 3 is equal to 4x. So we're one step closer to isolating x, but we're yet to get rid of the 4, which is multiplying the x. And in order to do that, we have to divide 4 on each side of the equation. After dividing from both sides of the equation, we find that x is equal to y plus 3 divided by 4. So now you can see, if you compare the number of steps that it took to find what y is equal to versus the number of steps it took to isolate x, you can save yourself a lot of trouble by just deciding that y is the easiest way to go about it. But this was just for demonstration purposes, for you to realize that whenever you are pressed for time during an exam, try to identify the variable that requires the least amount of steps to isolate. So in our case, we're going to go ahead with y equals 4x minus 3, which will lead us to step 3 that requires that we substitute the isolated variable. So if we go back to our original question, our second equation was 2x plus 7y equals 41, and we'll use that as the base equation for which we will be substituting y. So we can rewrite this equation, and after substituting y, so we could really stop here, because the original question is simply asking us to identify which of the following steps could be used to solve the substitution. And if we compare what we found with the options that were given, it looks like C is the correct answer. But I'll take it one step further. We find that 2x plus 28x minus 21 is equal to 41. So if you take note, we've not changed anything. We've simply taken the y and replaced it with its equivalent of 4x minus 3. Now, after adding together all our x's, we're left with 30x minus 21 equals 41. After regrouping, we find that 30x is equal to 62. After dividing through 30 from both sides of the equation, x is equal to 62 over 30. We can now solve for y by substituting with 62 over 30, and that leaves us with 158 over 30. So there you are. I hope you found this helpful. Thank you for tuning into our Tutoring Thursday channel. If you enjoyed watching this video and found it helpful, please give us a thumbs up, comment, and subscribe. We would love to hear from you. Until next week's Tutoring Thursday, happy studying.